Ladies and gentlemen, we request you to please take your seats. We are about to start the event. Please take your seats. We are about to start the event.
I want to be the agent of change to inspire.
एजुकेशन के थ्रू हमें ये पता चलता है कि दुनिया कैसी है.
فعلا در جایی هستم، در کشوری هستم که محدودیت آینده ما بسازم.
When we see something that we really want to fix and a challenge that we really want to overcome, we actually do pull together.
कि मेरा फ्यूचर बहुत ब्राइट है.
Tu dois te battre et réussir dans la vie.
अंडर एस्टिमेट कभी नहीं करना चाहिए.
Ladies and gentlemen, short sellers and tall captains of industry, honored guests and friends. It's that time of the year again for the annual ET Awards for Corporate Excellence. And I have been reliably told by ChatGPT that with the pandemic now truly behind us, the new ET Awards will indeed take place in the year it will be celebrating. That is, that the 2023 awards will be held, yes, this year. I'm saying this for a reason, because till then, please bear with the lag as we salute and recognize the best and brightest of corporate India of 2022, 4 months into 2023. I'm saying this so nobody keeps coming up to me and telling me you've got the year completely wrong. Now with 5G upon us, this buffering will soon end, and you won't have me shaking and randomly pixelating anymore. Now, talking about ChatGPT, how many of you have ever used it or regularly use the bot? A hand raise, please. So look at that, brilliant. There are lots of users here. Wonderful. I must confess that I was a bit worried initially about being replaced with ChatGPT this year. But it turns out that you still need a wise, tall, business-friendly, smart-looking master of ceremonies. Unfortunately, he's not available, so you have me. I'm Cyrus Saukar, and I will be your host this evening. And with that said, 2022 was not just about recovery, but it was also about sprinting and catching up, and then a bit more. Shammi Kapoor Saab would not have tumbled and yahooed in the Kashmir snow, but would have started digging if he only knew that there were reserves of precious lithium to be found in the state. And he would have found it and then said yahoo. Semiconductors are now the big thing too, everybody knows that. Here in Mumbai, of course, our best buses always had full, not semiconductors. We also officially want to apologize for this joke and promise to never repeat it ever again. But apparently, this one is a different thing altogether. India and Indian firms are making serious plans to dip into the chip industry. I myself, as an entrepreneur, already have brought out a bowl of salsa for this purpose, and I'm looking for any form of funding available at any point during the course of the show. Another great thing is sustainability. Sustainability has also become a serious issue with India Inc. You don't have to be a tie-dye t-shirt wearing hippie anymore to be environmentally minded. Being green has now greenbacks written all over it. And the war in Ukraine may be happening far away from Marine Drive, but it has changed things significantly. Like Salman Khan's hair in Kisi Ka Bhai Kisi Ki Jaan that was released last week. It's long, and it's blonde, and it's indistinguishable. It's completely indistinguishable from Pooja Hegde's long flowing locks. We don't know who's wearing what. talk about fluidity, but more of that a little later. So let's talk about business. Business has been swell. The economy has been, well, as they say here in Mumbai, fit. And much of the credit has to go to many of you gathered in this room here today. So before we begin, a huge round of applause to all of you for keeping things moving and shaking. Thank you. And a big round of applause also to our partner, Deloitte. A big thank you. Now, before we move any further, I would also encourage all of you here, with or without Elon Musk's blue tick, to please tweet about tonight's ceremony using the hashtag #ET Awards. That's hashtag ET Awards for all compliments. And with that, we now move on to the smart part of the evening, the ET CEO panel discussion. May I now invite on stage Executive Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Uday Kotak. Thank you for being here, sir. Joining you, CEO and Managing Director, Hindustan Unilever Limited, Sanjeev Mehta. Thank you, sir. Chairman, JSW Group, Sajan Jindal. Thank you, sir. Vice Chairperson, Apollo Hospitals, Preeta Reddy. And India's G20 Sherpa, Amitabh Kant. Thank you all so much for being here. May I also invite on stage Associate Editor, ET Mumbai, Arijit Burman, who will be moderating the panel. Thank you, sir. The topic of discussion, private sector CapEx revival, key to 8% growth. CapEx to India's economy is what caffeine is to my system. So without further ado, this is going to be a supremely interesting chat. Over to you, Arijit.
Thanks, Iris. I want to start with an interesting factoid that we stumbled upon the other day. Between the quintet of India Inc.'s heavy hitters, and many of them are in this room, that's Mr. Mukesh Ambani, Mr. Chandrasekaran, Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla, Mr. Mittal, who's here, Mr. Sajan Jindal, a little over $172 billion of capital expenditure has been lined up over the next 12 to 16 months. That's 5% of our nominal GDP for fiscal 23. From cement to steel, green energy to EVs, 5G, home is clearly where their heart is. But is that enough? Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, urged Indian industry to unleash their animal spirits right after budget, nudging all of you to step up, losing your purse strings, and capitalize on the new global supply chain opportunities to boost output. So let the entrepreneurial instincts flourish. Mr. Kant, I want to start by asking you with a counterintuitive question, which is, when global trade is slowing down, is 8% really a realistic target? Nobody is convinced that any economy, including China, will continue to grow at 8 to 10% over the next 5 to 10 years. So do we need to recalibrate the number itself?
So over the next 5 fiscals, it's largely projected that India will grow at about 6.8%. My personal view is that it's not adequate. India needs to grow at minimum 8% per annum over a long period of time. If you have to become a $5 trillion and then subsequently a $10 trillion economy and raise the per capita income of Indians, I think what has happened, if you look back, the government has carried vast number of structural reforms from GST, IBC, RERA, bringing down corporate tax rates to redefinition of MSMEs, etc. It's pushed for manufacturing through the production-linked incentive scheme in a very big way. And I think if you look across the world as well, there are countries in the region itself, Korea, Taiwan, earlier Japan, and in recent times China, which have grown at double-digit figure for almost 2.5 decades plus. Yeah. Even during periods when the global growth was slowing down, and India itself has grown earlier at high rates of 8 to 9% but it's grown for relatively short periods of 4 to 5 years. But we need to sustain this over a 3-decade period, and I've been a long-term believer that this can't be done without the private sector actually accelerating the pace of investments. I think the gross fixed capital formation in India has to rise. It's increased to about 29%, but at its peak, it's been at 36% in 2004. And that needs to be accelerated. I think the real point is that right now, the corporate balance sheets are really good. The bank balance sheets are really good. The NPAs are at an all-time low, 4.4%. Also that the government gave out a huge bonanza of 1.4, in 2019, August to September, what was it? The government gave out a bonanza of 1.45 lakh crores to bring our corporate tax to international levels. And I think it's really time to ponder over whether the country would have been better served if that resources would have been put into infrastructure or would have been used to push a consumer demand if the private sector is not investing adequately. I think the animal spirit of the private sector must rise up to the occasion now. To my mind, it's imperative, it's absolutely imperative that now is the time for the private sector to go and take all risks. If you look back in the last 3 to 4 years, actually, other than 3-4 large private sector groups who've taken the risk to invest, there are very few private sectors the balance sheets are really good now. Now is the time. So there is consumer demand is rising, capacity utilization has taken place. The country has to grow. So it's the time now for the private sector.
This is the time. But Mr. Kotak, I'll come to the private sector part, but a large part of our investment story is also predicated upon FDI. And since FY21, FDI figures are coming down. With this narrative around nearshoring, reshoring, do you worry FDI inflows into countries like India will further go down? Like venture dollars, from its 2 billion, which has come down from 12 billion in the Jan-March quarter alone. So is that a problem area?
I think divided into two parts, the strategic part and the tactical part. You've seen a significant slowdown in the rest of the world, valuations correct, particularly in some of the startup and the tech areas. Therefore, the slowdown in FDI is much more linked to those events around which a lot of investment came, probably at very high valuations. But if you look at India's position today on the global stage, India has managed its geopolitics for its economics brilliantly. I can't think about any country which has positioned itself the way India has in this round of geopolitics. 1 year ago, when we had this big Russia invasion of Ukraine, I was very worried. Oil was going up. What's going to happen to India? We've got to take sides between Russia and the West. But India navigated that position and is today on the global stakes table of geopolitics. With that, smart economics, low oil, and keeping the flow open is another big plus. Therefore, talk to most investors in the world. There are not too many places on planet Earth which give the kind of stability which India has today. And the nature of investments is moving more, not necessarily in startups at very high valuations, to more real economy areas. And from all that we are talking to some of the largest sovereigns and pension funds around the world, they're wanting to come in scale and size and are actually looking at a lot more flowers bloom. One of the things which has happened is you talked about 5-6 groups. We need many flowers.
Yeah.
And what we need to see, in addition to larger investments by these 4 or 5 groups, why can't we see the animal spirit come into broader corporate India? And that is our challenge. Let's move beyond that. And Mr. Kant, rest assured, private sector will rise to the occasion, give them time, and do not suggest increase of taxation, please. Thank
you. I'm saying this simply because, we've been saying that we've been at the cusp of this big private sector capex boom for the last 2.5 years. It's time we actually did it.
True. How significant would you say is the fact that if Apple is successful in India, I'm not talking about opening stores, but actually bringing manufacturing and back-end supply chain, will that be a big moment?
No, it's very, very significant. Let me first say that you have a major mobile manufacturing company partly relocating and partly enhancing its total manufacturing in India. Well, Apple is a much talked about story here, but Samsung has done this in a much bigger way as possible. It's happened in electronics, but if you look at the production-linked incentive scheme, we are doing it across 14 sectors. So if you're spending 27 billion, that means you're giving 5%. The objective is that we should actually get 520 billion worth of investment in that overall. That is the logic that we do not have size and scale of manufacturing, and therefore to make you bigger and bigger and bigger, and every year you keep enhancing your production and productivity to become global in size and scale. But the important thing to realize is that the PLI is there for just 5 years. India must become a highly productively efficient economy. We must be very competitive. We must be more productively efficient and more competitive than China is right now in 5 years' time. That's the challenge for all Indians. And that would require us to scrap even more rules, regulation, procedures, and states to really act. You know, you need about 10 states of India to grow at double digit for India to grow at 8%.
Yeah. But Mr. Mehta, our strength has always been services. Come what may, they have actually cushioned our stock markets. Is the manufacturing narrative overwhelming the services story, which has been robust so far in India and has worked?
You know, first, I think the important bit is it's not an either-or story. For us in India, it has to be an and story.
Yeah.
Yeah, services is a very strong bedrock. It has to grow. And we have seen the export of services. They've done extremely well. Manufacturing, which is today less than 20%, has to move up to somewhere in the vicinity of 24, 25%. You know, we're talking about creating massive amount of jobs, and very clearly, the collateral impact which manufacturing will bring in is immense. So we do need manufacturing. It's not just that we can grow only with services. But I'll just give you, talking about private sector investment and all, 2 data points, which gives us confidence that the private sector investment should come back. First is the capacity utilization for the same quarter this year. March quarter versus the same quarter last year, it's gone up by 200 pips. The other is, if you look at new proposals which CMI tracks, in the last quarter, it has been 12 trillion rupees, out of which 92% is private sector. And this is 2.7x more than the average of the previous 11 quarters. These are good signs. I don't think the risk appetite of any manufacturer in the country has gone down. And at the end of the day, we must also remember we should not get again back into the era of reckless investment and reckless lending. If it is driven by demand, I see no reason why manufacturing investment or capacity investment won't go up.
Correct. Mr. Jindal, you have operations around the world, including US. Now, with the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, won't industries also move to US? I mean, companies have committed over $200 billion for US manufacturing alone. Other countries in Asia, in ASEAN, are also rolling out the red carpet for this whole China plus one strategy. Aren't you like facing a problem of plenty?
No, I think the US, the industry in the US, they wanted to cut their costs, and they outsourced all their manufacturing things to China and similar countries globally. And I think they realized that what that has happened is that they have given their control in the hands of the Chinese companies. And now this government, Biden government, has realized that this is not the way US would want to do. And today the globalization is become like back to the old ways of doing business back into their own economies. And that's why US is really supporting the industry within the US. And every country globally is doing that. They are all trying to promote industries, manufacturing, components within their own countries, and that's
even
what...
our ASEAN countries.
Even ASEAN countries.
Yeah.
Similarly, India is doing the same way. The PLI scheme is a very supportive scheme, which is supporting the manufacturing within India. And I think the benefits of this will show up in the coming years very clearly.
Mrs. Reddy, I wanted to ask you that other than investing poorly in mass education, would you agree that we have not done enough to bring women into the workforce, which is a crucial initiative that several East Asian nations actually did to expand domestic export of labor-intensive sectors?
Maybe you're asking the wrong person, but I will still answer that. In a lot of industries, it is the women who are the back end of the workforce now, whether it's healthcare or services, IT services and banking. There are a lot of women out here. So I think they're capable, can be done, and for an economy which has to grow, women have to be brought into the workforce, and we have to acknowledge that. So,
are we doing enough, or what more needs to be done?
I think there's more which needs to be done. In terms of equal opportunities, women can do so much more. Even choices for education, I think they have to be incentivized to really take up higher education. And I think that some incentive for women to take that up is extremely important. For them to be able to work in a surrounding, in a situation which is maybe very male-centric, I think some amount of support and acknowledgement would be good. But we need to do a lot to bring women into workforce. But I come from, a business where it's largely by women, and now because there's 4 of us, all women, we run it. But I can see that, women coming into the workforce would be good, important, and would definitely take the economy further.
Mr. Mehta, with, from an MNC point of view, with US dollar at 5%, hasn't the overall hurdle rates gone up, vis-a-vis ease of doing business to currency depreciation in India? Is it that much difficult for CEOs to convince their boards? I'm talking about MNCs, vis-a-vis investing in India.
Let me give you an example coming from the company I lead, HUL. India today is the largest Unilever business in volume terms. And in another few years, it would become the largest Unilever business in value terms. So from a Unilever perspective, the top priority
is India.
Yeah. Now, Unilever is not an exception. In the last few weeks, there have been several global corporations who have invited me to speak to their boards on the India story and how HUL as a multinational subsidiary has succeeded in India. Yeah. I don't think the interest in India that we see today was as high today as it was ever before. There's huge amount of enthusiasm towards India. And our job is to make that potential into reality.
Okay. Mr. Kant, if we talk about labor, and if we compare it with China, the labor cost in China, around $8, is much higher than that of India. But in manufacturing, the total labor cost in proportion to the total cost of production is less compared to services. Services, on the other hand, we're seeing, a lot of it is moving to India to exploit the labor cost arbitrage. Back offices of banks, global capability centers of big tech companies. But if we take into account logistics, regulatory costs, we are nowhere close to India or even Vietnam or Malaysia. Thus, many would argue manufacturing FDI is not moving to India the extent to which it should. What should we do?
So India needs to fire on all cylinders. I mean, it can't be that India can grow on services. A large country like India which is bigger than 24 countries of Europe, can't grow only on services. India needs to grow on manufacturing. Manufacturing must account for 25% of India's GDP to create jobs.
Right.
It also needs to grow on agriculture. The agricultural productivity is very low. Productivity must rise in the agriculture sector. And India must grow on urbanization. Urbanization can be the biggest driver of India's growth story. And I think all this is very closely linked to creation of quality infrastructure. And I think one of the key things which has been done in the last 2-3 years in the budget is taking the outlays for infrastructure from 6.7 lakh crores to about 13.8 lakh crores or something, almost doubling the outlay. So the focus on creating top-class quality infrastructure is huge in terms of creating good quality roads, in terms of creating expressways. I mean, to have created 55,000 kilometers of road, that's almost 1.5 times the diameter of entire Earth. So if you travel around the country, you'll see that the quality of infrastructure and the turnaround time at the ports, etc., has hugely improved now. And I think that will have a long-term implication on better productive efficiency in India's economy.
Mr. Kotak, if I look at the RBI data, it shows large capex projects, which are over 5,000 crore investments, has seen a significant drop in the last decade. Should we therefore infer that small is beautiful and that should be our new capex strategy? In Germany, the focus clearly is on MSMEs. In China, in US, they go in for national champions. What should we do?
I don't think it is either or.
Okay.
I think we really need to grow our MSMEs. We need to really build the middle India. And we cannot get away from that. So getting the point which I made, development of India across sectors requires deepening of entrepreneurship, of really making it easy on the principles of ease of doing business even further. We've made progress on this, but there's a long way we can go. We are also seeing a significant consolidation in many sectors. And I have players from the telecom sector. Look at the level of consolidation which has happened. We are from 13 to 3 players, which is inevitable part of evolution. You're seeing that in the airline sector. You're seeing it.
Steel.
Steel.
Cement.
So, cement. So I think consolidation is good, but it should not be at the cost of net increase in capacity and growth. Therefore, I genuinely believe entrepreneurship really needs to fire, and I share with Mr. Kant his desire for much higher growth. But we must put in place the enablers for that. It's big business, it is MSME sector, and I think it's the banking and the financial sector. What is the capacity of the banking and financial sector if India wants to grow to a 10, 15, 20 trillion economy? Are we having the capacity for that? What is the ability of capital? What's the ability of underwriting skills? What is the ability to take scale? I mean, if Sajjan Jindal is here and I'm saying this, if Mr. Jindal wants to acquire a 50,000 crore asset in India, he should be able to get funding for that acquisition finance in India. He should not be going overseas for getting that funding. Why can't we have those skills and underwriting ability within India rather than saying, oh, this is too risky for our banking sector and therefore we keep banks away? We have to be very careful. We can avoid accidents on the road, but we must let cars drive much more on the road than they may be.
But you said that there is this concentration that is happening. You accepted the fact that there's too many, the total industrial investments do reflect a period of, a picture of concentration. How do we break that? How do we have the real animal spirits get unleashed?
I'm quite comfortable with reasonable consolidation, as long as it does not lead to monopolies. So if we avoid monopolies, but have some consolidation, that's good for economic outcomes over a period of time. It's a right balance we need to get. Therefore, I'm not worried about consolidation if 13 became 3, but I would worry if 13 became 1.
Mr. Jindal, everybody talks about environment and sustainability we also mentioned that. How is environment and CapEx interlinked to the sectors you operate in, which is steel, cement, power, and more importantly, who pays for it? The private sector, the government sector, or should multilateral agencies like the G20 or IMF should step in?
So I think the global warming or the change in environment is a real thing. And so therefore the energy has to become sustainable, and we cannot afford to continue to burn the fossil fuel and keep polluting the environment and creating more and more CO2 into the atmosphere. So all our businesses, unfortunately, are very CO2 emitting businesses, whether it is steel, power, or cement. And so these are difficult businesses, and therefore there's a huge amount of concentration in how to optimize, how to improve, while continue to grow, how to improve and reduce the risk of generating more and more environmental damaging gases. And that's where a huge focus is there. And therefore, in our power generation business, renewable power is the way forward. But my basic theme or thought process is that ultimately it's the economics which drives everything. As long as we can have economic solutions, like for example the renewable power today, whether it is solar or wind or pump storage or hydro, it's becoming more and more, because of the evolution of technology, it's becoming more and more cost competitive versus fossil fuel based electricity. Similarly, steel, in the steel production, you burn more coal, which is very expensive. So you want to bring in new technology by injecting hydrogen and stuff like that, so that you can reduce your burning of coal. So these are the sustainable ways of doing business, and that's where the whole industry globally is working, and India also is focusing on that. But I think India still, these are early days because we are a new country, new developing country. We have to build, but Europe is taking the lead. On the second question, that how the multilateral agencies will they
or who
fund?
Should? Should the private sector, should the government sector, or should some agencies like IMF or G20 take the proactive steps?
Correct. So one thing is very clear: the customer is not going to pay for all these extra costs. If you want to make green steel, then obviously it will be much more expensive than what is the way it is being produced today. But customer is not going to pay for that. So, so whether the government will pay, I don't think in India the government is going to pay. In Europe, governments are paying. They are providing a lot of subsidies to the steel industry or to the other industries, and that is also becoming a sort of restrictive practices, that so that imports of steel into Europe won't happen. So that's how the European countries are doing this whole strategy. But in India, we as industry, we don't believe that though Mr. Kant is sitting here, that the government will be able to pay for these kind of thing. There could be some sort of cross subsidy could probably happen, that they will put more tax on coal and then subsidize some industries. But I'm not a great believer of government supporting or subsidizing, and I don't even want that. That should not happen. We have to sustain ourselves. We have to create our own ways to do. So, and in I think COP26, the European or the Western countries had promised $100 billion for the emerging markets or for the new countries, but not a single dollar has come into any country. So therefore, I don't expect even that money coming in.
Yeah. Mrs. Reddy, the other CapEx, we keep talking about, human capital. I wanted to ask you about R&D CapEx in pharma. Why are we nowhere close to even some of the emerging markets when it comes to R&D CapEx?
I think over the past years, what has happened is, in a way, it's the survival. So all the capital was going into starting a business, running a business, and making it successful. But now we are at a time when, research and development has become so important, and there is capital available now to put into it. And it's like investing for the future, is that if we start investing into R&D now, we know that few years down the road that, we will be able to capitalize on what work we've done over the past 5 years. And I'll give you a small example. Even in the pharma sector, a lot of R&D did happen in the West, but we know that it's come into our country. We also now are the largest population, 1.4 billion, and we have the largest gene pool in the world. So if we can really work on this, we would come up with solutions which would be far better than what exists now. And this is a simple example. So I think everyone is waking up and realizing that investment into R&D actually pays like great returns in the future. So if it didn't happen in the past, I'm very confident that it's going to happen in the future. In every sector which we see, even if it's green energy, I think a lot of R&D has gone into it that we're even able to talk about, responsible or renewable energy. It happens in healthcare, it's happening in pharma, it's happening in construction, for example. So I think it didn't happen earlier because we needed to exist, but we're at a cusp and we will be seeing more in the future.
Right. Now, the vaccine makers are also saying that they're starting production once again. Where are we in terms of our sense of preparedness? What have been the key learnings from the second wave?
I think you must give credit to the vaccine makers and the fact that there was huge trust and support that, we should be vaccinating. And we came out in flying colors. Globally, we were one of the best countries which did so well, both because of the production and from government policy and support. Preparing for the future, I think as mankind, we have to do. And everybody is doing it. We just have to pray very hard that there's not one more black swan event, because on one side, you're saying we want 8% GDP, and on the other side, we're even thinking about this. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that there is nothing. But I think preparedness, a lot is happening with all the companies and the government pushing to say that let's prepare for the future, and these are the norms.
Mr. Mehta, everyone talks about this demographic dividend, billion plus population. But market sizing should be ideally linked to consuming class and not the full population. Do we get it wrong?
Yeah, look at it from this lens. Often what happens is when we look at India, we do percentages.
Yeah.
And when you look at that part of the population which has much more disposable income, and we say that the percentages are very small. We do a proprietary research, and if you look at people with more income and also based on behavior and lifestyle, that comes to about 14% of the households in the country. 14% of the households out of about 300 million households. You're talking about even this class being in size bigger than most European nations. So this is substantive. But then we have to understand that in India, the issue is also when you de-average, it's not about a $2,000 per capita or 1.6 lakhs per annum rupees, is you have to look at it from a perspective that there is still a large population which is at the bottom of pyramid. And that is where what we need is inclusive growth. Not just a GDP growth of 7-8%, but if we can spread it across, and these are the people whose consumption of even FMCG products is just about $20 per capita. So just look at the runway to grow. Once the country keeps growing, most of the industries would have huge runway to grow. So demographic dividend is a reality, but it has to be intertwined with inclusive growth to make it come alive.
How has your consumption base broadened, and to what extent is that base actually up-trading?
Say, just to give you an example, our premium products, very simple terms which are indexed at 120 to the average of the market. The premium products have been growing at 100 bips per annum, the share of the turnover.
Right.
Today, 1/3 of our portfolio is what we call as premium products. And here I'm not talking about masstige or prestige. And if the country keeps growing, just look at, again, how much more you can lift the consumers to higher order benefits.
Mr. Kotak, you know, this whole debate about the supremacy of the dollar, you know, do you think it's, you know, the days of the dollar hegemony is over?
I genuinely feel the biggest financial terrorist in the world is the US dollar. All our monies are in nostro accounts, and somebody in the US can say, you cannot withdraw it from tomorrow morning, and you're stuck.
Yeah.
That is the power of the reserve currency. And I think we are at a very crucial time in the world history, where the world is desperately looking for an alternative reserve currency. These changes happen once in hundreds of years. The last time it happened was when it moved from the British pound, at a time when people used to say the sun never sets on the British Empire, to the movement to the US dollar. The question is, which country in the world can take that position? And I'm just giving a few examples. I don't think Europe can, because it is disunited states of Europe. I don't think UK or Japan have the heft to be taking those positions, though the currency, both the British pound and the yen, are free currency. China, I think, has a major issue of trust with many, many countries around the world. Can India do it? And for building ourselves to a reserve currency is a long, sustained walk and run India has to do. It has to build strong institutions. It has to build a framework which is not dependent on the whim and fancy of A or B or C. The mechanisms have to be strong. India has to be trusted. The US dollar on every dollar bill has a line, in God we trust. We have to get a line to say that in India we trust, for the rest of the world to put their money into an alternative currency to the US dollar. But it is our time for making a shot at it, which will take us probably 10 years. But I don't think China can make it. I don't think Europe can make it. Otherwise, the US has an unbelievable, uncomparable privilege of being able to print money and get away with it as it has for the last 100 years. Thank you.
I think we have the Honorable Finance Minister, Shri Nirmala Sitharamanji, with us. So can we actually do that? I mean, that's the ultimate unleashing of the animal spirit.
So, you know, there's a point, because if you look at the post I thought Uday had a point, because if you look at the post-COVID era, it has had a devastating impact. You know, 200 million people have gone below the poverty line, 100 million people have lost the job. And the financial policies pursued in terms of loose packages, high inflation, tightening of interest rates is actually leading to a scenario where resources are flowing from emerging markets to the developed part, whereas future growth is all going to come from emerging markets. And therefore, there is a need to look at international financial architecture in a very big way. But I wanted to get down to this point which Sajjan Jindal was making about, my belief is that it will not be possible for private sector to grow at high rates of 8% plus for a long time without a different paradigm, and that is without going digital and without going green. You know, we've demonstrated our ability to do digital transformation in a very big way through the digital public infrastructure. We do 11x more real-time payment than what USA and Europe do. We do 4x more than what China does. We've used that to transform lives of citizens. And a similar process of technological leapfrogging needs to be done in going green. We do about 200 billion worth of fossil fuel imports. We are climatically blessed. The government has put out the green hydrogen mission. We can be the cheapest cost producer of green hydrogen. We can be the biggest exporter of green hydrogen. We do about 172 gigawatt of renewable energy. We become the leader. And I think we should use that to produce, because it's not just electricity as energy, it's the hard-to-abate sectors like steel, cement, refinery, fertilizer, which need to be decarbonized. And that is critical for the country. There, India must become the leader.
No, what he also wanted to understand is who bears that cost. Should institutions like G20 or the government or the private sector, because there will be a cost factor to it.
G20 is not a financing agency. My view is that companies which go green, which go digital, are going to attract value. They are going to attract capital in the future. They will become the most valuable companies of the world. It's the market which will decide it. If Mr. Sajjan Jindal doesn't go green, he will not be able to export to Europe and beyond after 2026. So it's incumbent upon Indian companies to go green to become globally competitive.
Thank you so very much, all of you, for an engaging conversation. Pleasure. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for that extremely illuminating and reassuring discussion. May we have huge infrastructure growth. And talking about infrastructure and fixing things, please don't drag this infrastructure on stage, folks. Lift it slowly. After all, capital expenditure is not just about moving furniture on stage, but also reinstalling it smartly, especially because I've rented it without scraping the floor a little nice. Ladies and gentlemen, what you think here is happening is that you think I'm talking to take away attention from stage, but what is happening on stage here, as you can make out, is actually a stunning installation work of art. It's called work of reinstallation art, actually. It's been getting rave reviews across the media. It's titled Kissa Kursi Ka. And you can catch this great work of art one last time at the Tate Modern in London or MoMA in New York. It is also, according to event companies, called Move Furniture While I Talk. But thank you for it. I hope you all enjoyed this wonderful work, exclusively created for stage today. But now, enough of art and back to the show of business. Here, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, is the welcome address from the Times Group Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Samir Jain. Take a look.
If we show emotion, we're called dramatic. If we want to play against men, we're nuts. And if we dream of equal opportunity, delusional. When we stand for something, we're unhinged.
It's Sue Bird's gonna need to calm down.
When we're too good, there's something wrong with us. And if we get angry, we're hysterical, or rational, or just being crazy. But a woman running a marathon was crazy.
Officials tried to pull her off the course.
A woman boxing was crazy. A woman dunking? Crazy. Coaching an NBA team? Crazy. A woman competing in a hit job, changing her sport, landing a double cork 1080? Or winning 23 Grand Slams, having a baby, and then coming back for more? Crazy, 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 and crazy. So if they want to call you crazy, fine. Show them what crazy can do.
Honorable Finance Minister, Honorable Chief Minister of Maharashtra, industry royalty. The ad we saw is testament to indomitable spirit of the woman, the crazy woman. bold, fearless, and unstoppable. She redefines rules, reshapes narratives, and reinvigorates all. This week, Prime Minister reiterated how the 21st century belongs to our most populous nation with the highest women vigor. Let's make this the century of the Indian woman, the crazy Indian woman, for that gets the impossible done. Honorable Finance Minister, thank you for gracing the occasion today. 3 months ago, you presented the first budget of Amrit Kal, simplifying taxes, easing business, nurturing startups, promoting green mobility. This year's budget was one grand step in the continuous journey to make Bharat Atmanirbhar. An idea will be considered crazy, impossible until it is done. But you spearheaded the rollout of 20 lakh crore Atmanirbhar package while introducing a transparent tax regime, all impossible until it was done. To unleash this potential in the Indian woman then is to unleash the force of Ashtalakshmi in her avant-garde form, from boardrooms to courts to cabinets, breaking man interruptions and mansplainings. Nirmala ji, Sita precedes Ram in your very name. A decade ago, when you had made an entire docket on gender budgeting for the then FM, you led us all to see the whole economy through the prism of Sita preceding Ram. Today, we would love to learn more from you how gender budgeting can unleash the potential for our women and men empowerment. We are in no rush. You are not here for a long time. You are here for a very, very long time. And for you to apply your incisive thoughts, to study the matter thoroughly, shot through your clarity, is bound to do wonders, to empower women in this country, and by the same push, empower the economy of India. All this will stop being crazy when it is just done, because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change India will be the ones who do it. With gratitude to all here today, thank you.
Thank you, Samirji. Thank you very much for that wonderful and inspiring video. And with that, I would now like to request Managing Director, Times Group, Mr. Vineet Jain, and our Honorable Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharamanji, to please grace the stage. Thank you both so much for being here. And with that, Mr. Jain, I would also request you to please deliver your address. Ladies and gentlemen, Times Group Managing Director, Vineet Jain.
Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, Chief Minister Eknath Shinde, ET Award winners, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the ET Awards for Corporate Excellence. This is where India Inc. celebrates and honors the men and women who are driving change, making a difference on the ground, and adding new and exciting chapters to the India story. To rise above the ordinary and to shine, every organization needs a balance of talent and leadership. Our winners today reflect just that. They represent the full spectrum of Indian business, from manufacturing and finance to technology and software services, to consumer goods and utilities. The common factor is that their leaders have dared to think big and build organizations that can succeed in any environment. I'm confident that in the years ahead, ET will welcome new names and faces into its Hall of Fame. There is an air of entrepreneurship across Indian cities and towns that I find exciting. Sure, not everyone will succeed, but there is a can-do spirit among the young and the restless that will not be daunted by the size of the challenge or crushed by the fear of failure. It is the leadership and vision of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his ministers that is giving wings to the dream of a new India. We are honored that the Finance Minister has graced this event. She has been justifiably lauded for presenting a beautifully balanced budget that is not full of freebies, even in a pre-election year. The boost to capital spending for the second budget in a row is something all of corporate India should cheer. The budget, again wisely, nudges the taxpayer towards a new tax regime, which offers lower rates but no exemptions. And it presents a glide path to reducing the fiscal deficit. Honorable Finance Minister, you have not allowed yourself to be distracted from the dharma of reforms or the sanskar of doing what is right and righteous. The numbers tell us that the government's policies are working. The World Bank's Global Economic Outlook report predicts that India's GDP growth this year will come in at 6.3%, making it the fastest growing among large emerging economies and far ahead of the less than 1% predictions for the US. In a post-COVID China plus one world, India's resilience and potential are touted by global and political thought leaders and industry captains. Consider one of government's key initiatives, Make in India, which is now a national imperative. From higher foreign investment in local subsidiaries to groundbreaking greenfield deals by global corporations, Make in India is taking shape. Apple supplier Foxconn has signed deals to set up plants in Telangana and Karnataka. Semiconductor fabs are coming up in Noida and Gujarat. The PLI scheme for multiple industries, including automobiles, telecom, and healthcare, is set to spur manufacturing. In enabling this, the Finance Minister's 2019 decision to cut corporate tax to 15% for new manufacturing companies has played a big role. There are headwinds, though. The war in Ukraine, US rate hikes, a possible recession in the developed world. Foreign investment flows have swung with global cues and their benchmarks. But unlike the past, that has not set us back. Domestic flows have helped prevent a washout on the stock market. And a resilient banking system has shrugged off the recent shocks to some major US banks. An agile and engaged government has walked many extra miles to keep the engines of the economy running through rough weather. Opting for higher Russian oil imports helped offset the impact of rising crude prices. The infra push unveiled in this year's budget is expected to drive capex in many sectors. In Amrit Kal, don't be limited by the constraints of our immediate past. This government is thinking and acting both local and global. If you need any inspiration, look no further than our G20 presidency. Theme of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Rooted in our glorious history, it is an apt anthem for a new world order. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jain, for sharing your encouraging and illuminating thoughts with us. And I request, of course, Ms. Sitharaman to please stay on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for today's evening's fireside chat with this evening's chief guest, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. We can accurately describe Nirmala ji as the master architect of the India story. At a time when much of the world is reeling with a poly crisis, she has kept a steady hand, a close eye, and a tight ship. Her budget this February did the near unthinkable. It was acclaimed by all and sundry for being responsive as well as responsible. Even industry, with their usual grocery list of demands, was impressed, so just imagine that. Without further ado, I'd like to request ET Editorial Director Bodhisattva Ganguly to join Ms. Sitharaman on stage. Ms. Sitharaman, Mr. Ganguly, the stage is all yours, and we all are all yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Cyrus. Sorry, I slightly mistimed my arrival on stage, but never mind. So let me just get straight to the, to a set of questions. In spite of all the digital innovations, I'm actually relying on a very old-fashioned piece of paper, which I've printed them out, but I'll just ask them. So, Finance Minister, you've just returned from a trip to the US. What is your sense generally of the financial sector there, and do you see a contagion risk from the financial sector in that country and in the Western world in general?
Contagion risk?
Or a spillover, yes. Yeah.
Contagion risk, if you go by the rule book, if all central banks are responding to the Fed's action almost sequentially, yes, and as a result you find Europe being more exposed to the chance of coming under recession. But I think since the last 1.5 years, gradually our central bank is also decoupling itself. Not that it was entirely linked with the US Fed even earlier, but post the pandemic and post the Russia-Ukraine, the sense that all central banks would look for a direction and move towards that direction sequentially is clearly disproved in the conduct of many emerging market central banks, not just India. So for India, I would think the contagion risk is not really a problem, but the risk is there in the sense when markets to which you largely exported are coming under recession, then the demand is going to fall, your exports are going to suffer. So that risk is definitely there. I'm not eliminating that. But the contagion risk, usually linked to the conduct of the central banks, I would think is not there for us to face.
So let me just take off from a point that you made on the central bank, and as you said, while there may have been some belief that central banks in emerging markets in other parts of the world would mechanically follow the Fed, that is no longer the case. I think the RBI also recently paused its rate hike. Of course, they have explained that their recent decision was a pause and not a pivot. But do you think, in view of the latest inflation numbers, both retail and wholesale, that that we've hit peak interest rates?
That's not for me to say at all. I will not even give an indication whether my feeling is that or anything of that kind. I think it's only fair to give RBI its terrain, and it's for them to take a call. And I think most of you all are very happy with RBI having paused. So I really can't speak differently, can I? I want all of you all to be happy with the way in which RBI has responded. So no comments on that, because I think RBI is getting the sense from the ground, getting the sense of the urge for us to move forward in terms of growth, and also seeing how the implications of a recession elsewhere can hit us. So I think we should be confident that the RBI will take the right decision for the next round as well.
Right. But if I can ask a question, I mean, we've addressed this before, but we enacted a law some years back which sort of explicitly said that price control was RBI's. By law, it had to explain, for example, if it fell below 4%, and there was a band of 2 to 6%. Now, there was
not each time, if you have consecutively 3 times.
If you have missed 3 times. But what I was coming to was that given now this was obviously before the COVID crisis, before the Ukraine situation created, all kinds of disturbances for the economy. What I'm getting at is that, do you think the law kind of binds RBI's hand in the sense and gives it and imparts a bias towards raising interest rates when other circumstances, such as, let's say, difficulties in the world economy, crude oil volatility, weakness in the Indian economy, those might become secondary, and inflation becomes the overriding factor. Therefore, they want to. Is there a need to revisit that law to give more flexibility to the RBI?
Well, the factors which determine what happens today are very much more extraneous. Post the war, post the pandemic, post the supply chain related issues, and so on. Even as it is with the law existing, I think both the administrations and also the public at large and industry in specific are not obsessed with the law. That, oh my God, RBI. And it's not very many times that RBI has come in a situation that it had to write a letter to explain itself. Just that one instance. Yeah. And just that one instance was also purely because of the way in which global markets were performing. So I think, like many things in India, you have a law, you have an institution which has to follow it. You also have the circumstances where they are not followed to the last word. But I think all of us are, Indian democracy is mature enough to understand why it is happening. And it doesn't warrant at this stage for me to go and meddle with the law.
Okay. Just coming to your future challenges and inflation for the rest of the fiscal, do you think, let's say, OPEC Plus's decision to cut output, would that, plus the possibility expressed at least in some forecasts, the monsoon may be on the weaker side because of El Nino, would that put pressure on inflation?
Well, every year, every season, this question comes before us. And every season, which is normally predictable, it comes before us. Now we've seen such wonderful, historic, unpredictable events happening where we don't have a template to deal with it. But we've come across and walked along and gone past them as well, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a war, and so on. Now, El Nino is also not something which is happening this time for the first time. To ready our economy for meeting that kind of an impact in the monsoon or not a happy monsoon also is part of our preparedness. So there's no new element to it, but yes, one has to be cautious.
So we obviously have a number of state elections. There's one in Karnataka next month, elections at the end of the year, and of course the general elections in a year. So do you see the possibility of an upsurge in populist pressures, particularly, for example, particularly referring to the demand and the decision by state governments to revive the old pension scheme, and that looks like emerging as an electoral issue. That's not the only kind of populism that one can do, but that's kind of the thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think this upsurge of populist demand is not from the population. It is more from the politics, from the political parties which think, I have no other card to win the election, so I need to throw this. All the temptations to the people. There are instances of states where even after splendid freebies, parties have not won. That's not to say freebies don't seem to bring in any value addition. They have their place, and not a very happy place, I would say, because it burdens the economy, and most often these freebie givers don't even honor it in full. So I think some states are very prone to it. some others not in a big way. So the debate on freebies is something which happens when the freebies are fantastic enough and you know the budgets can't support it. But if you're referring to the OPS and NPS debate, elections are happening. May not be for me to now say, but the last few months, and I'd like to believe post the budget, the discussions on NPS and OPS is a bit subdued. I'm not giving credit to anybody, but by then, I think by now, if I can say it so, the realities of the complication in this issue, it's not a black and white situation of, I don't want this, I'm going there. The implication of moving, the complications involved in the moving are all now coming apparently for everyone to see. So, in the current set of elections, I don't think that is coming in for the debate. Also because we've announced during the passing of the finance bill that we have formed a committee headed by the finance secretary to look into how issues are panning out in the OPS and what are the kind of things that stakeholders want. So the consultations are going to happen. Based on that, whatever has to be looked in as possibilities will be looked in. But one thing which is somewhere at the back of my mind, returning to OPS is probably going to be extremely impossible. It's not for A state or B state. Every state will be burdened much more than what they can take, even within a matter of 5 to 10 years, and after which it will balloon. So what kind of a consultation, what are the inputs, the finance secretary and his team will have to see.
So I think the one solution could be perhaps a guarantee element, some kind of a guarantee element woven into the NPS. Is that something which you would look at?
Finance secretary is here. I'm sure he's hearing your suggestion.
Maybe he can address it when he speaks. Yeah. Just wanted to ask you, before as you came in, I think you caught the last part of the discussion, which was on private sector capex, and that's been one of the issues which one has been grappling with. It is not picking up to the desired extent. Is there? I mean, I think the private sector is richly represented here in this room. Is there something that you would like to tell them or make a pitch for?
Well, for once, I'm going to talk completely in favor of the private sector from their side. If after 2019, bringing down the corporate tax and giving a time till March 2023 to expand businesses or set up new businesses and everything else, if the world had been normal, I think to be a bit tough and expect saying you've not really come out in flying colors would have been a reasonable argument. But if immediately after 2019, October when this was announced, September end, you had the pandemic and how? And after that, you also have the uncertainties of the war. But despite all this, I still can see many expansions happening, new investments happening. Otherwise, why will there be such a impactful impression about India and its attempts to bring in renewable energy? Look at the keenness with which people are coming to India to set up in many fields, whether it is your semiconductors or looking at renewable energy or looking at rare earths. And also because the policy per se has now opened up even space sector. I was there in a different context releasing a book. I did speak about India's public sector enterprises policy, which actually has opened up so many areas in which private sectors can come and invest. In fact, there's no area left without the private sector coming into it. So with all this, I can see, otherwise India's space industry, even as it was doing very well, wouldn't have had so many private parties coming in and saying, we would like to use the facility. So it is happening. But I don't know from where this trigger has come about. Some data is also flowing, saying Indian private sector is not yet ready. I'm sure they're ready. Aren't you? Why? I'm supporting you. Why? See, that's the problem with Indian industry, you know, private sector. They don't, yes, we are there. They don't say that. They gently, on being asked, would clap and...
Sure. So maybe one reason why, I mean, it's not specific to any particular private sector, but it could, again, this question will be asked at any time, but there is a, perhaps anecdotally, there seems to be a sort of a rise in the number of income tax notices, the GST tax evasion. While no one is supporting tax evasion, obviously one needs to crack down on it, but there impressionistically there seems to be, a large volume of notices going out, various sectors being investigated, being probed. Earlier it was the, there were questions about the ED, but it's not just, it's also IT, GST, etc., raids and searches. Could that be a deterrent?
I think the industry knows where the raids are going. Let me be very clear. I'm not justifying it. I remember in 2019, I was pilloried saying, oh, tax terrorism. You questioned me several times on it. I'm not suggesting that that word is not being used, that expression is not coming about now, and therefore there's no terrorism. I'm not saying that. There can be some harassment here, harassment there, harassment some places. But today, when you're looking at deep data and AI-driven, faceless-driven systems, the fact that trails are coming out, obviously, and the trails going to shell companies are there in your face, I can't see how the CBDT or CBIC can remain mute spectator. How the boards can remain a mute spectator. When data is active, it is showing. And if brazen misuse is happening in some sections, it's only natural that you should go. And I'm glad, and efficiently, if they're going, I'm glad. Because that has to be plugged. So those who are genuinely and rightly paying taxes will lose faith. If there are, there are pictures put out. Shell companies, about 300 of them, operating in about a 50 square meter area with just one table and chair and getting refunds to the extent of about 400 crores. Would you expect the department to sit quiet and watch? Obviously, they'll go. So I don't want this to be a conversation eternally about India's and tax authority. Tax authorities are now sitting up and being ready to answer as well. But if you're going to be quiet for fear that you'll be accused of unleashing a certain kind of terrorism, the inefficiencies will only perpetrate. We don't want that. We need to appreciate people who are paying genuinely the tax, and those who are misusing it will have to be called out.
I think the public...
This audience is very, very sure that they're not happy. And they want to convey that we are not happy. Tax terrorism, investment, whatever be the topic. No. And that's why you get this impression that no investments is happening. They're all giving you that picture, but they're investing.
Okay, let me come to two of the biggest reforms of the government, GST and IBC. GST is a success, possibly for tax evaders, too much of a success. But IBC seems to have encountered various problems. I mean, it's sort of caught in the Indian litigation maze. What are your views, and are there...
No, IBC has its problems in terms of the benches in the NCLT and NCLAT not having adequate members. Timely filling up of vacancies is not happening. It's not because we don't want to. The layers of decision making which is involved in it, only to track the right people so that they're efficient, they're transparent in their operations, or in their decision making, in that a lot of time gets consumed. Because appointments are jointly made by the court and by the government. Getting the dates, sitting and having a list of people and then having their IB and other thing clearance obtained does take a time. And that is primarily the reason. The act per se is robust. It's been updated with inputs coming from industry. So we are periodically having also awareness built on it. The professionals are also being given good training so that they don't delay the process. In spite of all that, if there's a problem, I admit to it, we've not really been speedily filling up the vacancies in the benches.
Is there, there's been some debate about, reforming India's capital gains tax, or basically raising capital gains tax on equity, because generally the government has been phasing out all kinds of tax exemptions. That's very clearly, the direction of tax policy, and that's the way to go. So what are your, I know you've recently issued a denial on capital gains tax, but is that likely to be the direction?
Well, at this stage, we are not having any proposal before me, and that was a fantastic news flash. And I have quite a few media. I'm sitting with the media now. I would have thought any such flash or any such breaking news also gets one input from the concerned ministry saying, this news has come to us, we're going to put it out, what's your view? And we can say, no, it's not happening, or we can always give you a clue that it may happen, but don't quote me business. This particular news, there was no cross-referencing with the ministry at all. So end of the day, of course, insisted that we come out with a clarification, but somewhere there is huge speculation outside, and probably that speculation expects, even as it's being a speculation, that more the number of times the speculation happens, the government will be moved to do it. The government will do it when it wants to do it, but at the moment there's nothing. So I don't want to add to the speculation.
Okay. Just wanted to ask you, a couple of questions were, there was a reference to gender budgeting in earlier on speeches. Do you have, is there any such plan in terms of, there's also a suggestion from Niti Aayog. Is there a plan for gender budgeting that you have?
I don't know how to answer this question because, I'm coming fresh from a meeting where this was also discussed, mentioned briefly. Yes, I did. When I was in the commission, National Commission for Women, I had taken up this on behalf of the commission, prepared a report, and submitted it to the then finance minister saying there should be a gender budget. And I'm sure the audience here is well informed that there is no separate budget for women, even under gender budgeting. It's more to look at and slice the budget details to see how many actually benefit women, how many are women-centric, how many have women and men component, and so on. It's more looking at it from the prism of women. And is it welfare, is it empowering, all those cross-cutting. There's been several decades of talking about it and also looking at aspects of it. But I think we've now grown beyond what gender budgeting of, let's say, 2000, 2001, 2 had to say. We are now looking at women-led policies, meaning where you give a prominence much ahead for women to take it forward and so on. So there are so many ways in which you're reaching women to empower them. It is not just the money which is going to the women, but also those other paraphernalia which is so important for women. So I'm not sure in the very typical lexicon-related gender budgeting there's anything happening. But there's a whole lot of things happening for women, women-related policy making. So that's how I'll put it for now.
And does that look at, does that envisage any kind of tax concessions for women in terms of lower tax rates and so on, or is that?
I think we're already giving some concessions.
You are giving a concession.
And also we've come up with the special bonds.
The higher interest rates.
So, yes, as and when it should happen, it's happening already.
Let me just ask you one or two sort of last questions, or what do you see are the are the necessary things the government, I mean, we are at about, I mean, there are various projections of growth rate, and obviously we are the fastest growing economy in the world, but it can be, but our growth rate is essentially about around 6%. It could be 6.1, 6.2. What can we do, but given India's relatively low per capita income compared to, let's say, China or even Mexico, what can we do to get to 8% or 9%, which could be the country's true potential? I know obviously we are coming out of a setback of the 2 years of COVID, but what are the things that the government can do to get out of that?
If you're looking at number only, 6.2, 6.3, or is it going to be 8? And if it is 8, it's better for India. All that is fine. And Honorable Prime Minister constantly looks at areas in which you can have greater activity. Areas not geographical, but even in terms of sectoral, in terms of industry, in terms of MSME. This particular budget, I was glad that Prime Minister himself came up with, look at SSGs, they are in the rural area, women, and for them to have greater credit, greater empowerment for the produce that they produce, will you give them greater marketing assistance and also expertise to make their products better and so on. So if that is one area. The other area you're looking at, because India's economy is so driven through the small and medium units, and also looking at those traditional people with handicrafts in their hand, literally that which they create using their fingers or tools or whatever, the Vishwakarma related. That's going to take the economy straight to the doorsteps of these people. And that is why post the budget, when the Prime Minister himself explained the budget to the people, he used one line which was very attractive. And I think it was absolutely the pointer towards what we have, vanchiton ko variyata. I'm not good in my Hindi, but that captured my imagination. If you really pull up those who are skilled but yet lying somewhere in a corner of the country and give them that kind of an access. Now what this ONDC does, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, what account aggregator does, what the QR code based the NPCI does, are all very indicative of small tools with which you are approaching smaller people, but all of whom make a wide canvas of people who have to be activated in the Indian economy. If they are going to be activated and if they are going to access the global market through digitization, and that digitization speaking to you in your own language. It was amazing in the World Bank meet where the IMF organized a digital public infrastructure meet in which experts were all seated. They were talking about the achievements of India, not just the variety of things that you brought in digitally, but also the scaling up that has happened. India scaling up is just impossible if you don't take the diversity into consideration, the languages that are available, and the diversity in development parameters as well. Some very backward, some not so backward, some very well developed. All of them equally are at ease with digital. These are the ways in which I think you're making sure the economy gets vibrant at every pocket. The attention given to the aspirational districts. These are not small steps. These are going to improve your, indicators. Your GDP base is going to widen because of that. And if that widens, and now that the population is young, you expect to have per capita income going up.
Thank you, Finance Minister. May I request Cyrus to take this forward? Please take the stage.
Nirmala ji, I'm going to request you to please remain on stage, and thank you for that fascinating and frank discussion, Honorable Minister, and thank you so much, Mr. Ganguly. With that, I'd like to invite Mr. Vineet Jain back on stage to join Ms. Sitharaman. Could we have you on stage, sir? Thank you. And now, without further ado, I would like to invite the Honorable Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Eknath Shinde ji, to please grace the stage and address this Amchi Mumbai gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Minister Eknath Shinde.
नमस्कार, सगळ्यांचं मनापासून स्वागत। आपका भी मैं मुंबई में महाराष्ट्र में महाराष्ट्र सरकार की ओर से स्वागत करता हूं। द इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स अवार्ड्स फॉर कॉरपोरेट एक्सीलेंस में उपस्थित हमारी केंद्रीय फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर आदरणीय निर्मला सीताराम जी, हमारे दूसरे मंत्री भी यहाँ पर है, केंद्रीय मंत्री मनसुख भाई मांडिया जी, और विनीत जैन यहाँ पर है उपस्थित, सभी उपस्थित महानुभाव। और आज जिनको अवार्ड्स मिलने वाले हैं वो सभी पुरस्कार विजेता जो है उनका भी मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, उनका भी अभिनंदन करता हूं। और बीसीसीएल तथा इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स का भी मैं बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करना चाहता हूं। The Economic Times Award for Corporate Excellence is a very prestigious award in corporate sector. At the outset, I welcome all the guests and ministers of Government of India. I congratulate Times Groups and BCCL for organizing this award ceremony. I also congratulate all award winners and jury members. और मैं ये भी कहूँगा, द इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स सिर्फ एक अखबार ही नहीं बल्कि एक भरोसेमंद मित्र भी है। आर्थिक प्रगति का रास्ता भी दिखाता है और मार्गदर्शन भी करता है। आर्थिक मामलों में ये फ्रेंड, फिलोसोफर एंड गाइड भी है। आज इस क्षेत्र में अच्छे काम करने वाले जो लोग हैं उनका सम्मान होने जा रहा है। इस सम्मान से प्रेरित होकर भी युवा पीढ़ी इस क्षेत्र में अपना योगदान दे, ऐसी मेरी कामना है, अपेक्षा भी है। कोविड काल में भी हमारे मनसुख भाई मांडविया जी जिन्होंने अच्छा काम किया, मिनिस्टर फॉर हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर ये विभाग वो संभाल रहे। टीवी सोमनाथन सेक्रेटरी फाइनेंस है, श्री सुनील जी मित्तल है, शिवजी नाडर है, आरती जी कृष्णा है, निनीत जी कामत है, जयश्री जी गुलाल है। ये सभी लोग जो है, ये सभी पुरस्कार विजेताओं ने अपने अपने क्षेत्र में बहुत ही अच्छा काम किया है, उल्लेखनीय काम किया है। और इसलिए मैं फिर एक बार इस राज्य का मुख्यमंत्री के नाते ये पुरस्कार प्राप्त जो इतने विजेता है उनका मैं अभिनंदन करना चाहता हूं, उनको शुभकामनाएं भी देता हूं। महाराष्ट्र एक ऐसा राज्य है जो बाहें फैलाकर हर किसी का स्वागत करता है, खास करके मुंबई हर एक को आगे बढ़ने का मौका भी देता है। मुंबई के बारे में आपने कहा, आमची मुंबई, ये सबका स्वागत करता है। इसी राज्य ने एक सामान्य नागरिक को मुख्यमंत्री भी बना दिया। यहाँ पर जो आंखों में सपने लेकर आते हैं और महाराष्ट्र और मुंबई आपसे 2 हाथ से लेती है, लेकिन 100 हाथों से वापस भी लौटाती है। ये भी मुंबई की खासियत है और मुंबई का ये इम्पोर्टेंस भी है, महत्व भी है। महाराष्ट्र इस देश का आर्थिक आधार भी है एंड मुंबई इज द इकोनॉमिक कैपिटल ऑफ इंडिया with 15% contribution. Maharashtra is the biggest contributor of GDP. Maharashtra's share of 20% in production and 30% in foreign direct investment. So you can see that Maharashtra is the favorite destination of investors. मैं ये भी कहूँगा कि देश का 25% व्यापार जो है पोर्ट के माध्यम से होने वाला 40% व्यापार या मुंबई से होता है। देश में 40% इनकम टैक्स हो और 60% कस्टम ड्यूटी भी मुंबई से ही जाती है, ये भी मैं निश्चित रूप से कहूँगा। इसके अलावा देश का 40% विदेशी व्यापार भी मुंबई से होता है। महाराष्ट्र इज द ग्रोथ इंजन ऑफ इंडिया और इस इंजन को और तेजी से चलाने के लिए हमने महाराष्ट्र में कई कदम उठाए। हमारी कोशिश यही है कि महाराष्ट्र हमेशा प्रथम क्रमांक पे रहे। मुझे विश्वास है कि अब यहाँ पर सब इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट हैं, सब हमारे इस जो कोशिश में सब साथ देंगे। आज महाराष्ट्र इंडस्ट्रीज के लिए बहुत ही अच्छा वातावरण भी है, पोषक वातावरण भी है। महाराष्ट्र सभी जो उद्योग व्यवसाय जो है उनको हमेशा बढ़ावा देने वाली सरकार है, राज्य है और इसलिए बड़े इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट जो है उद्योगपति है, यहाँ पर इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए भी आ रहे हैं। ये हमारे लिए बहुत बड़ी बात है। 2.5 साल पहले हमारी सरकार जो 9 महीने पहले, उससे पहले 2.5 साल की सरकार जो थी उस पर मैं टीका टिप्पणी नहीं करूँगा, लेकिन पॉलिसी पैरालिसिस जरूर था, उसे हमने सुधारने की कोशिश की है। और मुझे खुशी है कि उद्योग जगत ने भी हमारी नई सरकार पे भरोसा दिखाया है। हमने जो दावोस में गए थे 1,37,000 करोड़ का MOU साइन हुआ, वो सिर्फ कागज पे नहीं रहा, उसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन भी शुरू हुआ है। ये भी एक बड़ी उपलब्धि है, बड़ी अचीवमेंट है। हमारी सरकार जो है, जैसे मोदी जी और आप आम आदमी को सामने रख के निर्णय लेती है, काम करती है, वैसी हमारी सरकार भी आम आदमी का ध्यान रख रही है। कारपोरेट क्षेत्र का विकास ही सबका विकास है, क्योंकि इसी से एम्प्लॉयमेंट भी बड़े पैमाने पे जनरेट होती है। पिछले लगभग 9 महीनों में हमारी शिवसेना और भारतीय जनता पार्टी की जो गठबंधन की सरकार में इतने काम हुए कि बताने में समय कम पड़ेगा। इतने काम किए भी है, 5 डिसीजन भी लिए हैं और भी हम ले रहे हैं। ये भी बड़ी उपलब्धि हमारे सरकार के राज्य के लिए है। हमने मित्र संस्था की स्थापना भी की है, आर्थिक सलाहकार परिषद भी बनाई है। महाराष्ट्र पहला राज्य है जिसमें नीति आयोग के धरती पर एक थिंक टैंक बनाया है और जो हमारे आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का 2025-2026 का जो $5 ट्रिलियन का जो सपना है, वो जो उनकी अर्थव्यवस्था का जो सोच है, निश्चित रूप से हमारे महाराष्ट्र की भी सोच है, कोशिश है कि $1 ट्रिलियन तक कैसे पहुँचे। और इसलिए आप सभी लोगों का निश्चित रूप से ये साथ लगेगा हमें। इसलिए हम लोगों ने देखा है कि बड़े इंफ्रा प्रोजेक्ट को शुरू किया। पिछले 9 महीने में कई जो नागपुर मुंबई समृद्धि हाईवे जो हिंदू हृदय सम्राट बाला साहेब ठाकरे जी के नाम से है, आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय जी ने पहले फेज का उसका इनॉग्रेशन किया। मेट्रो का भी काम शुरू है और निश्चित रूप से ये मुंबई में अगले कुछ 2-3 सालों में 350 किलोमीटर की मेट्रो लाइन फेज़ में हम लोग उसका लोकार्पण करने जा रहे हैं, क्योंकि मुंबई में ये सुविधा ज़रूरी है। मुंबई इंटरनेशनल सिटी है, यहाँ पर देश के नहीं दुनिया भर के लोग आते हैं और मुंबई बदलने की कोशिश हमारी है। आज हम देखते हैं, सभी आप लोग गवाह हैं कि यहाँ पर मुंबई ट्रांस हार्बर लिंक हाईवे हो, जो सिंगल लॉन्गेस्ट सी ब्रिज 22 किलोमीटर का, MTHL प्रोजेक्ट हो, कोस्टल रोड हो, दिल्ली मुंबई एक्सप्रेस हो, बुलेट ट्रेन हो, पुणे मिसिंग लिंक हो, ये सभी प्रोजेक्ट जो है हमारी सरकार जो आने से पहले पूरे ठप थे, बंद थे, लेकिन जैसे ही सरकार बनी इसे सब जितने स्पीड ब्रेकर थे उसको हटा दिया और काम जल्द से शुरू हो गया। और प्रधानमंत्री गति शक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान में हम लोग पोर्ट्स को भी बड़ी तेज़ी से डेवलप कर रहे हैं। रेल बजट में भी आपने 13,539 करोड़ रुपया हमारे महाराष्ट्र सरकार को रोड और रेल के लिए दिए, इसलिए भी मैं आपको धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ, आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। और ये जो सभी सेक्टर में हमारी सरकार काम कर रही है, इसका कारण एक ही है, इस सब का लाभ जो है समाज के अंतिम घटक तक पहुंचाने के दिशा में सरकार हमारी काम कर रही है। और स्टेट इज द लीडर इन इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ। फॉर बिजनेस एंड ट्रेड वी हैव बिगर इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन महाराष्ट्र। बहुत वी हैव ह्यूज पोटेंशियल, गुड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, गुड कनेक्टिविटी, स्किल मैन पावर, सब कुछ है। और इसलिए मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि जो इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट है उनको यहाँ आने के बाद किसी भी प्रकार की दिक्कत नहीं होगी। परमिशन हो, सिंगल विंडो क्लियरेंस हो, सब्सिडीज हो, रेड कारपेट हो, सभी देने का निर्णय हमारी सरकार ने लिया है। और निश्चित रूप से आज मैं यही कहूँगा, मुंबई से लेकर महाराष्ट्र में देश में सबसे ज़्यादा इंफ्रा प्रोजेक्ट महाराष्ट्र में शुरू है और इसमें आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का हमें पूरा साथ है। और आप तो हमारा जो प्रस्ताव आपके पास जाता है उसे बिना कटौती किए पूरे सैंक्शन आप करते हैं, इसलिए हम काम कर पा रहे हैं। हमारे गृह मंत्री जो है, सहकार मंत्री, वो भी अमित शाह जी, उन्होंने भी इस महाराष्ट्र में सहकार क्षेत्र में बहुत बड़ा योगदान, सहयोग हमारी सरकार को किया है। और इसीलिए मैं इतना ही कहूँगा, ये हमारी डबल इंजन वाली सरकार है। अगर हम केंद्र और राज्य सरकार हाथ में हाथ मिलाकर काम कर रहे हैं, और सभी लोग को मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि ये सरकार जो हमारी है ये प्रो डेवलपमेंट है, प्रो एनवायरनमेंट एंड प्रो पीपल और इंक्लूसिव एंड पार्टिसिपेटिव है। सभी लोगों को साथ लेकर आगे बढ़ने वाली हमारी सरकार है। और इसीलिए इस प्रगति में आप सभी लोग यहाँ पर उपस्थित हैं। इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स ने इसका आयोजन किया है। विविध क्षेत्र में जो अच्छा काम करते हैं उनका सम्मान करना, उनको पुरस्कार देना, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। और इसीलिए मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि इंडस्ट्री का भी तीसरा इंजन अगर साथ जुड़ गया तो निश्चित रूप से राज्य के विकास की जो बुलेट ट्रेन है और तेज़ी से दौड़ेगी और इस राज्य को आगे बढ़ाने के साथ इंडस्ट्री को भी आगे बढ़ाई गई। और इकोनॉमिक्स टाइम्स के लिए मैं इस आयोजन के लिए बहुत आपका अभिनंदन करता हूं, क्योंकि इतने सभी लोगों को एक प्लेटफॉर्म पर लाना ये भी बड़ी बात है। और इसलिए इसी पॉजिटिव विचार के साथ मैं अभी जिनको पुरस्कार मिलने वाला है उन सभी लोगों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ, अभिनंदन करता हूँ, शुभकामनाएं देता हूँ। जय हिंद, जय महाराष्ट्र।
Thank you so much, Indeji. And with that, I'd like to invite CEO Deloitte South Asia, Romal Shetty, on stage to address tonight's wonderful audience.
Respected Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Chief Minister, Honorable Health Minister, and distinguished guests. It's my pleasure to address this esteemed audience today as the CEO of Deloitte South Asia. It's been 3 very uncertain years for the world. Today, many developed economies are either staring at a recession or at least a slowdown. India, however, has not only shown resilience, but has also emerged stronger. Despite disruptions such as the pandemic, high inflation, and the geopolitical crisis, India will remain the fastest growing large economy for the next few decades. The country today is in a unique position to contribute significantly to the global economy. This was only made possible by the government's fiscal prudence, structural reforms such as the IBC and GST, and the substantial infrastructure investments, both digital and physical, complemented by the country's large workforce. In the last 8 years, the capital expenditure on infrastructure has increased 4 times from 1.75 lakh crores in 2014 to 7.5 lakh crores in 2022. Through the PM Gati Shakti program and other infrastructure investments, logistics costs have gone down significantly, helping business become more competitive. Today, something from Tirupur to Ludhiana would take about 3 days, whereas it used to take about 9 days. Moreover, the productivity, which has been unlocked by the digital economy, would actually create 60 million to 65 million jobs by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, we've entered this Amrit Kal on a very strong platform. I feel inspired by an emerging economic order that favors the country. On our journey towards the next level of excellence, we believed the strengthened confidence of Indian industry and global investors can bring us closer together to our objective. Mr. Uday Kotak spoke about trust, and I think that's a very important part. So how do we really improve the trade environment to boost private investment and exports? This would be through continued policy and regulatory stability and thereby instilling trust. Trust brings citizens, businesses, and governments together in a partnership of parity, transparency, accountability, and security. Boldness in policy making can not only lift livelihoods, but also our national spirit before global audiences currently convened in India for the G20 presidency. Vasudhaiva Kutumbam, which Mr. Jain as well mentioned, one earth, one family, one future. At its core, its bedrock is trust. We at Deloitte are a purpose-driven and will continue our efforts towards nation building and climate change initiatives, such as the one in Haryana, where we're helping find a solution to stubble burning, and most recently in AP towards sea erosion projects. We at Deloitte are excited to collaborate with the government and the Indian industry as India leads the way towards responsible and sustainable growth. Deloitte has 20% of its global workforce in India today. 400,000 people, 100,000 people are in India. This workforce in India is actually going to move to 30% of our global workforce, showing our continued, we believe in India and the India story. We're committing to build India, committing to build better futures. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, sir. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin our wonderful awards night. The first award is Emerging Company of the Year, and the award goes to India's largest transmission company that has kept the green energy initiative a key element of its plan. It is proof that sustainable infrastructure development is not an oxymoron and that good business practice is good business. Let's hear it for the ET Emerging Company of the Year, Adani Transmission. I request Mr.